Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. Super Bowl's over. NFL season's over. We're about a couple weeks away from the Combine. A couple months away from the draft. There's a lot going on. Free agency is going to open up in about a month. There's a lot to talk about with the Super Bowl. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Tuesday?
I'm great. I'm anxious to talk about the game, which was one of the better Super Bowls we've seen in recent years.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't think it was as good as the Patriots win over the Falcons. That was
a 25-point comeback.
Yeah.
I would say last year's is a little more, well, if we're talking like explosive, exciting, last year's was better. But, you know, I think it lived up to it.
Yeah.
It was the largest watched game, I believe, in NFL history. 123 million streams on CBS. It's a crazy number. And if you talk about Paramount Plus and the totality of it, I think it was well over 200 million people watched this year's Super Bowl. So there we go.
Yeah.
It lived up to what the teams were.
One thing I'll say about this game, the refs didn't play much of a role in it. You know, thank God.
Yeah.
Whereas last year, at the end,
the
refs,
had the James Bradbury. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this game was very clean in terms of the refs not having any influence on it, I thought. Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about it later, but I do think if the 49ers ended up winning the Super Bowl, that Kyle Juszczyk reaching for the first down, I think Chiefs fans may be a little bit, was that a football play? Was that supposed to be a fumble or an incomplete pass? I think we would have heard a little bit more about that. So yeah, but let's talk about the Super Bowl because it is true. The Kansas City Chiefs have won the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 58 goes to the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs on this final play. Mahomes, the former Chief and former Jet, returning to the Chiefs. Mecole Hardman scores the game-winning touchdown in overtime to have the Chiefs win their third Super Bowl in 5 years. Mahomes reclaims Super Bowl MVP once again for the third straight time. It was a pretty good Super Bowl all around, I would definitely say. The Chiefs, what a mission they have been on this entire season. Mahomes' worst season statistically. This team looked like they were dead in the water multiple points in the year, but somehow pulled it out in the end against one of the league's best defenses, one of the league's most explosive offenses. In totality, this was an incredible victory for the Kansas City Chiefs. I want to know, what do you think, or what did you think of the Kansas City Chiefs' performance in Super Bowl 58?
The heart and soul of a champion. That's what I would say about this game. That team, they showed that they have the experience playing in the Super Bowl, that they drew on that experience. They didn't lose their cool when they got down by 10 points. All their players were focused and played extremely well. They minimized their mistakes, even though Mahomes threw one interception. And, that was really the only mistake that I saw.
Pacheco had the fumble as well.
Pacheco had a fumble, right. That's right. Those two turnovers but they weathered those turnovers. They had a number of players that you wouldn't think of that came up pretty big in this game, I thought. Leo Chenal, right? He forced the fumble from McCaffrey.
On the first drive.
And, it didn't amount to any points going the other way, but it stopped the 49ers from scoring on the first drive. And I thought that was big. And he also blocked the extra point. And that was big, right? That missed extra point was huge, right? That would have meant that the Chiefs needed to score a touchdown there going down near the end of the game instead of being able to kick a field goal.
Right.
And they had a fourth down there, and they went for the field goal and tied the game, which sent it into overtime. They would have had to go for the touchdown there. They might not have scored it. That was a huge play in the game. And then there was the center, Creed Humphrey. There were no pressures on Mahomes coming up the middle and the whole game, so he played great. Nick Aguirre, who was replacing Joe Thuney, he played in all of the playoff games, and he was very credible, I think. I mean, given that Thuney is an all-pro, to lose that guy and still manage to win the Super Bowl with a backup player who was originally drafted by the Chiefs and brought back this year on a one-year deal, I thought he deserves a lot of credit. And then on the defense, Mike Pennell, who was signed at midseason, He was the second. He was a real run stopper in the game, and he had the second highest graded defender on the Chiefs. So those guys, no name guys, right? And one more, Tommy Townsend, the punter.
Punter, yeah.
He put him in. He averaged 51 yards on his punts, and he made sure that the 49ers started in not great field position on many of their drives. So, and there were a lot of punts in this game. Given all of the yards, I mean, it was really quite a game when you think about it. I think they each punted 5 times.
10 total punts, yeah.
Yeah. And the 49ers had 382 yards and the Chiefs 455.
Yeah.
So, there was an overtime period. So that probably
it plays into it a little bit.
That played into it a little bit. But I would say, the heart of it and soul of a champion, that's how I would describe the 49ers effort, with everybody contributing. I'm seeing the Chiefs. Yeah. So with everybody contributing and not making many mistakes. The penalties were minimized, and I was very impressed. I had picked the Chiefs to win 24-21. They wound up 25-22, so I was pretty close.
Very close. I picked 27-22 49ers. I was also pretty close. I was
the wrong teams.
Wrong team, but I was 2 points off for the wrong team. This was, and as you've talked about it, this reminds me as well as you of the 2018 Patriots, where people were counting them out, especially in the playoffs, where, except Tom Brady was a little bit old, getting on the older side. The tight end, Rob Gronkowski, wasn't looking as effective in the regular season as he has in his years. Travis Kelce didn't look as explosive. He didn't score a touchdown until the playoffs past week 11. There were a lot of reminiscent things. The defense was coming up big in big-time moments, and then the playoffs struck, and lo and behold, we're seeing the old Gronk again. Big-time catches in the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Has the biggest catch in the entirety of the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 53, in near triple coverage, making the big-time plays. Travis Kelce, same thing in the playoffs, making the big-time plays, 4th and shorts, 3rd and shorts, drawing cornerbacks and defensive backs away from the guys who are going to get the ball. And what's crazy is that we talked about this receiver group and how Mahomes has to change the way he plays from more of a explosive, dynamic offense where he's sending 75-yard bomb touchdowns to Tyreek Hill. It's now need to be more dinkin' dunkin' game managery. What was shocking about this game is that we actually saw a beautifully thrown pass and a deep shot from Mahomes to, once again, Mecole Hardman. It was a beautiful throw, rolling out to your left, bombing it, and then the 49ers number, was it 31 in coverage? Completely blew the coverage. I don't know why you're slowing down when you're, seeing a guy run right past you because you're a safety. I don't understand that. That's the fault of the 49ers, but this Chiefs team, this was historic because now they're the 9th team in NFL history to repeat, and now they're heading towards a three-peat, which has never been done in NFL history before. But this season is a culmination of the Chiefs overcoming any doubts anybody had. This team with no real receiving core, or a very young and limited receiver core, you got rid of your liability, Kadarius Toney, a healthy scratch for a number of weeks. After that Patriots tipped interception, Mahomes was done with him. Besides that, all the other drops and the other tipped interceptions, and then you also had the penalty, the offensive offsides, which killed their chances of beating the Bills in the regular season. The Chiefs fixed their mistakes. The defense came up big in this game, pressured Purdy, made sure to disrupt the middle of the lane, batted a couple of his passes, and the first half was a little bit shocking. I mean, you had to, the first half was bad. The Chiefs looked overmatched, overpowered. The 49ers defense, which has been gotten throughout these playoffs, they came up big in the first half and forced Mahomes into a couple mistakes, couple 3rd and outs. Not really great offense in the first half. Then the second half opens and the floodgates open when it came with the Chiefs. And, they were very fortunate on, a muffed punt, short field. That's a 4-second touchdown, by the way. That was their first touchdown of the game. And then in overtime, it looked like Mahomes was in complete control. And I want to speak about that because people are obviously debating Mahomes, Brady, and Andy Reid, Bill Belichick. I'm going to ask you, and we watched the very end of this game together, but when it was 10-6, in your mind, did you believe that the Kansas City Chiefs would come back and at least either tie the game up, make it interesting, or win the game? When it was 10-6 after that field goal, what were the thoughts going through your mind?
I did think they would come back, because one thing I noted in this the line line on the score,
Yeah,
the 49ers, neither team scored in the first quarter,
correct.
right? The 49ers scored 10 points in the second quarter, 3. The Chiefs had 3, and they only got their 3 right at the very end
Right.
of the first half. And then in the third quarter, the Chiefs scored 10, the 49ers nothing.
Right.
I think that has to do with Super Bowl experience, right? The halftime in the Super Bowl is much longer
Yeah.
than normal, right? And they went flat, the 49ers.
Yeah.
They couldn't do much when they came out in the third quarter. It took them till the fourth quarter to get back in their groove, where they scored 9 points and the Chiefs scored 6, and then in overtime, 49ers 3, and the Chiefs got that touchdown, didn't have to kick the extra point. So I think that the experience, like, again, the Chiefs' experience in the Super Bowl shines through here, being there 4 out of the last 5 years, and knowing that you got to come out strong in the beginning of the third quarter because you've been sitting for a long time.
Right.
It's longer than normal halftime. So I did think they would come back. They've proven they can come back. They've come back. They came back in all their playoff games, right?
Yeah.
And they were on the road for all of their playoff games. And they, I just think they, as Mahomes said, I enjoy being the villain. When you go on the road as a playoff underdog and you beat the favorite team and they're at home, you're a villain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And he proved that he can be a villain and be successful. 34-46, 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. McCaffrey, Mahomes, also the leading rusher, 9 for 60. Yeah. And receiving Kelsey, 9 of 93. Their big players came up big time. Chris Jones, fantastic game.
He had a tremendous game.
And actually, that play that 49ers had third down.
Was it 3rd and 4?
3rd and 4, and they were knocking on the door, right? They were right down there, close for a touchdown.
I believe this is the clip you're talking about.
No. Have you got that one?
Do we have it? Let's see. Yeah, this
is it right here.
He blows
Chris
it up.
Jones right up the middle. He blew it up. Then nobody even blocked him. This is a mistake on the offensive line, right? Nobody blocked him. And that was Purdy was under a lot of pressure.
He was.
He was under a lot of pressure. He was only sacked once. But the pressure was much greater against Purdy than it was against Mahomes.
49% when it came to Purdy.
And that contributed to them being only 3 of 12 on third downs. That was an important factor in the game. So the Chiefs' defensive line putting the pressure on Purdy was a factor in the game for sure.
I think what was fascinating about this game is that I think everyone, I know the Chiefs won, but they were getting outmatched the entire first half. A massive tell, I believe, was the fact that they were only up by 7, and they were completely outplaying the Chiefs. Mahomes could literally do nothing on offense. And the fact that it was only a 10-3 ball game, you're only up by 7 if you're the 49ers. And yet the defense is making Mahomes look pedestrian, and I was literally sitting there thinking, this is another bad Mahomes Super Bowl. He couldn't do anything. And then you open up the third quarter, Mahomes throws an interception. And what do? Not much. The fact that the Chiefs always stayed in this ball game, it really tells just how great Mahomes has been and how he is one of maybe 3 players in NFL history where, actually it's one of 2, where if you're down by 10 or more, you're saying that guy can go win it. Because Brady, I believe, down by 7 in the playoffs, he's 10-11. Everyone else is like, it's such a low percentage. Brady set the tone for this guy is completely different. If you're down by a touchdown, it's a coin flip whether or not you're going to win the game. Mahomes, I believe, is 9-3 or 9-2 in those situations. So Brady set the bar of this guy is unbelievably great. Mahomes is smashing that when it comes to just pure clutch. And this is another testament to it against a great defense who pressured him on, I believe, 42 or 40. It was 43% of his dropbacks. And the 49ers didn't blitz. They blitzed him 12% of the time. Meanwhile, the Chiefs blitzed nearly 50% of the time. Mahomes, when he was blitzed, was 6 of 6 for 50 yards. He was perfect. The pressure, the amount of adjustments Andy Reid made in that second half and that Mahomes made and this offense made, it showed in the second half because they came out in the third quarter, scored 10 points.
Yeah.
The defense stepped up big time, gave the 49ers a big goose egg in the third quarter, and really set the tone for how this game was going to turn out.
Yeah. I think the Kansas City, very well coached team.
Absolutely.
Right? Extremely well coached team. All their players. They all played well. And I think that that showed up big time. And I also think late in the game, the 49ers, well, actually, midway through the third quarter, I think the 49ers defense kind of ran out of gas. I mean, the Chiefs were moving the ball up and down the field then, and particularly in the overtime, man. I think the defense was gassed.
Oh, big time.
Yeah,
I think so as well. But I was very, very disappointed in the way the 49ers closed out that game. But gotta give props to the Chiefs. They're going for a three-peat, which has never been done. I'm sure we'll talk about that eventually during the offseason or on Friday or whatever the case may be. But congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes and Andy Reid, 3 Super Bowl championships, and they're looking to go for their 4th in a first three-peat in NFL history coming up next season.
They were talking about the target being on their back all year long because they were the defending champions, right? Well, what do you think it's going to be like next upcoming year?
Right, exactly. So let's get into our next topic here. So let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. It was not great. So Kyle Shanahan suffers his 3rd Super Bowl loss. 2nd time as a head coach suffering a loss. The other time was as the OC of the Atlanta Falcons in the Brady 25-point comeback in the Super Bowl 51, I believe. Not great. He was trying to exercise his Super Bowl demons, and, well, he didn't. Another loss, another crippling loss. You had a lead on Mahomes, gave it up in the second half, and you did indeed suffer your 3rd Super Bowl loss. I want to know, what do you think the main reason for the 49ers loss goes to?
Multiple reasons.
Multiple
reasons.
Okay.
They couldn't convert on 3rd down. That's one. And part of that was because there's too much pressure on Purdy. That's number 2. The missed extra point. Hey, that was huge in this game. The defense ran out of gas. Okay, and one thing that really maybe not be much of a factor, but people are talking about it, is some of the players didn't know what the rules were in overtime.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
They said, we didn't know what the deal
Kyle
was.
Juszczyk didn't know.
Yeah, he didn't know. Another guy they talked to.
Mecole Hardman said he blacked out and didn't know what was going on after the touchdown.
Right. So those are my reasons, I think, that the main reasons that they lost.
So they didn't know the rules.
Well, the rules, I think that's a minor one.
So
I think that the coaching can be criticized for that one.
Okay.
But they couldn't convert on 3rd down. Too much pressure on Purdy. The missed extra point, and the defense ran out of gas. Those are my reasons.
There's a lot to unpack when it comes to the 49ers in there. Once again, and I think you could say now, expected crumble in the Super Bowl. The first one I'm going to say, and this was the tipping point when it came to this game, and it was the muff punt. It was the muff punt for me. You have, I believe the return guy is Ray McLeod. You're having him scream fair catch or whatever the signal is you call out. There is no reason. I believe that player's name is Luter. He's still trying to get on his block, and I forget who the top guy is. I can't really see the number very well. He moves out of the way, so we can't say that, oh yeah, he was just blocking downfield. No, the other guy was moving out of the way. And it just hits his foot. Mahomes scores in 4 seconds, and that completely swings the game around momentum-wise in favor of the Chiefs. That's not what needs to. You literally let Mahomes off the hook on that point. And now the Chiefs lead 13-10. You give them free points, basically. That was the first one. The other one is, I don't think Brock Purdy played very well. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show, but for me, I don't think Brock Purdy played well at all. He had a perfectly fine and actually really great first quarter. Then after that, not so much. Not so much. This play has haunted me. I probably looked at this play and rewinded it about 5 times. So let's look at this. So this one is the play that you brought up earlier on in the show. This one is a simple, Chris Jones pressures up the middle, and it doesn't look good. I looked at this. There are maybe 3 people that are open. I'm going to pause it right here. So what we see is Brock Purdy's backing up because Chris Jones is about to basically kill him. George Kittle just released from a block. So he's at the bottom of the screen, kind of. He's right here at the very, very bottom, about to release. You have Christian McCaffrey also at the top of the screen, about to break free for a screen. And at the very, very top, I believe that's Brandon Ayuk. His defender falls down. You have 3 options to throw it to. CMC the dump off, George Kittle the release, and then you also have, I believe it's Brandon Ayuk, over the top, who eventually gets open for a touchdown. Instead, you're looking at Jawan Jennings at the bottom of the screen going on an outbreaking route, because I don't know if that was the design play. I don't know if Kyle Shanahan said, hey, by the way, throw it to Jennings. But I'm gonna play it again really quickly. You see now, Brandon Ayuk breaks free. CMC's open. George Kittle has already released. Chris Jones is on him. Instead, Brock Purdy decides to throw it to Jawan Jennings, who wasn't even open until basically Chris Jones is in his face about to tackle him. So that was another one. I just think Purdy didn't do a great job reading it when he was under pressure. In that second half, Purdy fell he fell completely apart there. The numbers for Purdy were not good in that second half. Let's talk about the first quarter, because he did play well in the first quarter. This was him in the first quarter. 80% completion percentage, 105 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 10.5 yards per pass, and a pass rating of 110. What about in the rest of the game? Hideous. 53.5% completion percentage, 150 yards, 1 touchdown, no pick, 5.4 yards per pass, and a pass rating of 81. So he wasn't turning the ball over. But what we've seen this season, and why people say, or one of the reasons why people say Purdy is better than Jimmy Garoppolo, is he is more effective within the offense. He makes the big-time play. He doesn't give up any crucial mistakes or really lose them the game. Well, in quarters 2, 3, 4, and overtime, he was not good at all. Like we said, the numbers, 53.5% completion percentage. How can we call that good? How can we call that good? So for me,
I did say, there was too much pressure. He had a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, but this is the guy who's
3 of
number
12
one
in the
against
third
the blitz.
quarters.
Number one against the blitz, and he couldn't do anything with it against Spags' defense.
Chris Jones unblocked, headed right for him.
Number 68, who I believe
he had
came
no
in as a
time
backup.
to look around. He had really no time to look around.
So then he was going for what option probably was numero uno, who was already covered.
Yeah,
so I'm going with a guy who, by the way, is still in the line of sight of Jennings, Kittle, on a release. And by the way, Christian McCaffrey would have broken free for a touchdown. Brandon Ayuk over the middle was in the end zone wide open. And then George Kittle probably would have at least gotten you a first down.
If he'd had even another split second, he would have found one of them. He would have.
You would think.
He would have. Yeah. Chris Jones was touching him when he threw the ball, right? So he had no time at all to throw the ball. So I think that one.
But
and I will say, with all the
sight.
criticism you're heaping on Brock Purdy for the final three. No, just let me finish.
I'll get into the defense
The
right
final
after.
3 quarters of the game, they did wind up going to overtime.
They did?
Right? And he did get him a touchdown, right? And the extra point was missed.
Right.
That was huge. That extra point they missed was huge, because that would have forced the Chiefs to go for it on 4th down in the red zone there. They were on the 5 or 6 or 7 yard line? I don't remember what yard line they were, but they were pretty close. That was probably a low percentage play, scoring a touchdown there.
It was on
they
San
kicked
Francisco 6
and
yard
they
line,
knew it. Yeah, and they knew it, and they kicked the field goal. So that took it to overtime. And then, I would say in Shanahan, you're talking about what the main reasons were. I should have added one more. They probably should have deferred in overtime. They should have deferred. They were talking a lot of analysis about that. Said you're probably better off to defer when both teams have the opportunity to get a score, even if the first team scores a touchdown. Then you know what you're up against. The Chiefs knew that. They knew they needed the touchdown.
Right, but I have zero problem going or getting the ball in overtime. I have no problem with that, because as Kyle Shanahan said today, quote, we wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go and win, which I completely understand. And by the way, your defense just got embarrassed at the end of the game. It's tired. The Chiefs' defense looked exhausted at the very end of the game, so I could sort of understand that. Where I'm not going to let, I smashed the offense a little bit, but now I want to talk about the 49ers defense. What the hell were they doing in the 3rd and 4th quarters, especially in the 4th quarter? Mahomes, as we've seen him, was dinking and dunking his way through your defense, because why? You were dropping 5 guys in coverage, and he could just keep going to the underneath route, so it'd be 5-yard gain, 4-yard gain, 5-yard gain, 3-yard gain, 6-yard gain. It was just a rinse and repeat of just slow killing you. That's all it was. And just the overall defensive play calling at the very end of the game was completely suspect. And I don't know why exactly you would do something like that, where all Mahomes needed to do was get field goals, and you're playing to stay away from the big time play. You were hoping to not give up a 35-yard gain, and instead, all Mahomes did was just keep flicking you. Just being a pest with the 3-yard gain, 4-yard gain, 5-yard gain. And eventually, they're down at your own 6-yard line anyway. And when it comes to the field goal here, and you're talking about, it blocked extra point. I'm glad that it got blocked. Because I guarantee the way this game was going, Mahomes, even if they went for it on 4th down, the way this game turned out to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they got the touchdown. Now the pressure would be all on you to go and try to win the game. So the fact that it was only tied, the pressure just doesn't, completely overcome you because the game is tied. Instead of Mahomes scoring a touchdown on you, then you have to go down and try to score. Instead, if you don't score, the game isn't completely over because it's still a tie game. So the block is unfortunate, but I think it was more so of a positive thing because the way the game turned out to be, let's say, just for all intents and purposes, that the extra point does not get blocked, so the Chiefs go down and score a touchdown, so that makes it, what would it be? So 23-19, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm doing that math correctly, then you have to go down and score. You have to go down and score instead of just keeping the game tied or just kicking a field goal, and then the Chiefs have to match you. You have to score. Chiefs go down and score again. You're losing on the last drive of the game. So you have to score instead of having the Chiefs try to match you. And then the overtime, as you mentioned, I have no problem with it because your defense just got cooked. You have to set the tone for overtime. And that was it. The 3rd and 4, the 3rd and 4 in overtime, which I showed. 3 players were open. You got, and there's one more thing. And in this game, I wrote it down on a reason why I thought the 49ers would win. And this is what I wrote for Friday's show. Kyle Shanahan will not start backup running back over his starter like Todd Monken did with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. He also won't run it 6 times with his running backs. The 3rd quarter, you know how it opened up? 6 straight passes. Exactly like the Ravens did that entire game where they abandoned the run.
No, that was a mistake.
Not only that, there were 3 runs the entirety of the 3rd quarter. 3 runs for 7 yards. Meanwhile, there were 10 passes in the 3rd quarter. 4 of 10 for 25 yards. You had 6 minutes time of possession. The Chiefs dominated you in the 3rd quarter. You abandoned the run.
Yeah.
And how many times we watched the late game together? I said, run the ball. It's 3rd and 3. Run the football. And Mahomes would just pass it off. Or not Mahomes, sorry. Purdy would pass it off.
No. One other play I mentioned on the 49ers defense when it was 4th and 1, right? And that was for the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah,
4th
in
and
overtime,
young.
right.
And Mahomes carried the ball. You know he was going to do that.
Oh, absolutely. He's not going to put the game in someone else's hands.
Who was the spy who was on Mahomes?
Nick Bosa rushed, I believe it was Pacheco.
Nick Bosa,
Nick Bosa ran directly and tackled Pacheco. Didn't even worry about Mahomes because the Chiefs basically never run bootlegs. They never do the RPO where Mahomes keeps it. So Nick Bosa didn't even worry about Mahomes. Ran right by him.
That was a mistake. They should have.
Everybody knows.
Mahomes
is not going to put the game in someone else's hands.
Right.
Even if it's Travis Kelce, maybe in Travis Kelce's hands. But it's him or Kelce.
Yeah.
He's not going to throw it to Sky Moore. He's not going to throw it to MVS or Mecole Hardman. He's going to do it himself.
Yeah, and he did.
Because there was a 3rd and 1 or a 3rd and 2. They tried to run up the middle. Pacheco couldn't get 2 yards or a single yard. They punted on that drive. But there were a lot of times where Pacheco would run to a brick wall and he couldn't do anything. They tried, and as I said, try to set the tempo with Pacheco. They tried to do that early in the game. He had like 11 carries for 37 yards. He couldn't do much. And it was up to Mahomes late in the game to come back and win this. So defensive play calling, I don't understand you're dropping 5 in coverage when Mahomes has been killing you with the short passes. You also had just very poor 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and overtime for Brock Purdy. CMC was carrying that way, 160 yards. And by the way, in this game, Purdy was relying on yards after the catch the entire time. 2/3 of his yards exactly were yards after the catch. So it was all about his playmakers making the big time play. He was forcing balls to Deebo Samuel, 11 targets, 3 catches. He tried to get it. There were I think 2 or 3 throws where it was forced to either Ayuk or to Deebo that nearly got picked off. There was one to Deebo Samuel who he was never open at the time Purdy threw it. He was completely covered. So the 49ers just in this entire game, it looked great in the first half. Shutting down Mahomes in the offense. Nick Bosa having a great game. Fred Warner covering Travis Kelce. Okay. Kelce didn't do really anything in the first half. Lo and behold, in the second half, he comes alive and in overtime. So the 49ers had a great first half, and in the second half, as per usual, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers crumble. Brock Purdy, he's only in his second year, but he could not get it done in the Super Bowl. All right, we're going to take a break, but coming up, we're talking about, are the Chiefs officially a dynasty, and where do they rank in the all-time dynasties, as well as, after this loss, should Brock Purdy potentially be worrying about his job? We'll talk about that right after this.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in on a Tuesday. We're talking the Super Bowl in this episode of the Harvey Hour. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic. So, the big question that people were talking about was last year when the Chiefs beat the Eagles, do they count as a dynasty? And I think a lot of people realize, no, we didn't call the Patriots in the early 2000s a dynasty until they got that third Super Bowl ring. So, I think the big time question is, are the Chiefs officially the NFL's latest dynasty with this back-to-back win?
Yes. That's an easy one. Yeah, they are. They went through the Dolphins, the Bills, the Ravens, and the 49ers all on the road. They lost 5 of 8 games during the season to put themselves in a position where they didn't have a home game all throughout the playoffs, and they managed, through the heart and soul of a champion, repeat the Super Bowl and be the first team to do that in how many years has it been?
It was the 03-04 Patriots.
So it's a long time ago.
About a decade.
Only nine other teams have done it. Now they have a chance to be a three-peat, which nobody has ever done. And they look like they're going to be really good for a lot longer. I mean, one other thing you can say about them and Mahomes, he's been in the AFC Championship game every year. He's been a starter.
Yeah.
7 years in a row.
6 years in a row.
Is it 6?
Because 2017, he didn't. I think he played one game at the end.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's pretty impressive, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
not sure
if he continues to do that, I would say that he has a good shot at being considered the greatest quarterback if he plays 20 years and 20 times in the AFC Championship game. That will probably,
that's what it takes.
That would rank him. That would maybe put him a little ahead of Brady. Maybe. I'm not conceding that totally just yet, though.
Right.
Yeah. So I do think they are a dynasty now, and they're going to have a target on their back now like they've never had before. We'll see how they react to that and whether they can keep that fire and use the opportunity to win a third in a row that nobody's ever done as the motivation to take them there again in the Super Bowl 59. We'll see.
I would say, well, first off, the obvious is absolutely 1,000% they're a dynasty. Where does this rank among the all-time greatest dynasties? I'd say the Patriots is definitely one. You had nearly 20 years of being a dynasty where they made the... Okay,
I'd say the Patriots had two dynasties.
I'm saying they have one
They had
because
one at the beginning of Brady's career and one near the end.
Well, the core was still there. If you still have the core players of Belichick and Brady, those are the two main cogs that keep this whole train rolling. So for me, I think I consider that entire, legacy, the 20-year period, give or take, that is their dynasty because they didn't make it to 2 Super Bowls in between their gap of not winning any. In that 10-year gap, they still made it to 2.
Yeah.
And nearly had an opportunity to win both.
And they were in the playoffs every year, and they won the division every year, and they went to the AFC Championship 9 times in a row, I think, right? So
it's 8 or 9, yeah. So I would consider the entire realm. The other one I would say that the Chiefs may be better than is the Steel Curtain.
I don't know about that.
72-79. You don't think?
They have 4 Super Bowl wins.
Correct.
Right?
But
the Chiefs
did
only
make
have
it
3 so far.
They did make it to 6 AFC Championship games, though.
Yeah. So I think, the Steel Curtain to me is still a little bit ahead of them.
So you put them number 3?
But if the Chiefs win again this next year and 3 in a row, and then they have 4 Super Bowl wins, and I put them, they will pass the Steel Curtain.
Okay.
But they still will not have passed the Patriots.
Okay, so what about the early Green Bay days, 60-67?
Yeah. Well,
what would you put? Would you put this Chiefs team above them?
I don't put them above them either. I grew up during that period, and I hated Green Bay.
Right.
Because, I was not a fan of Green Bay at all.
What about the 49ers of the early 80s into the early 90s? Mid-90s.
Well, they won 4 Super Bowls,
81
too.
to 94.
They won 4 Super Bowls, too, so I don't think they're ahead of them just yet either.
No, even with this win?
No, because they have 3.
Okay.
Any team that has 4 and did it in the span of, 10 years or so, I'd say is still ahead of them.
So,
they
you're
have
going
to win
for
one more.
the ultimate number,
they got to win
which
one
is
more.
Okay.
They got to win
fair.
one more, I think,
fair.
in order to be. They're a dynasty for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Are they one of the greatest dynasties? I still think there's a few teams ahead of them.
Fair enough. When it comes to, we talked about this, the hardest path to the Super Bowl, for me, it was Brady in the first year with Tampa. Because he goes and plays the Commanders, who had the number 2 defense in the league. You go to the Saints, who had a top 10 defense along with Drew Brees. Then you go against the Packers, who I believe had a top 10 defense, and you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And then you go up and play the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl with Chris Jones. With a good with an okay defense. It wasn't this year's defense, because this year's defense was Mahomes' best defense he's ever had.
Super Bowl, the Chiefs' offensive line
They had
was
4.
weak.
They had 4 offensive linemen that were new to starting in that position. But I would consider that the hardest, just based on who you were playing, the level of competition, the way you need to be literally perfect in each of those games to pull out with a win. Taylor Heineke shocked the world, and he really made his name in that game, where he basically nearly outplayed Brady to win that playoff game.
He got hurt badly in the game and still came back into play too.
So when it comes to, I in my mind, that was the hardest path. Now, I don't know.
I think the Chiefs had a very hard path.
I would say
there.
that this is probably the hardest one.
I agree. Yeah.
But if we look at the numbers, I would say it definitely is. If we take a look at the actual teams, how the Dolphins never did well against good teams, the Bills, who Mahomes always beats, and then the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, he was the MVP, but Lamar Jackson was never really at this stage of the game, and we saw it in the game. The experience was no longer there. Like we saw the Chiefs, who were very experienced in this position, versus the Ravens, who Lamar has trouble winning any type of playoff
I think
game.
the Ravens in that game beat themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And then you go up against the 49ers.
score was 17-10, right?
Yeah, 17-10.
And they Lamar threw an interception in the red zone, and
the quadruple coverage.
And what's his
Zay
name?
Flowers.
Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
He made a rookie mistake there, sticking the ball out there so they could tap it out.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know what? I do think this is probably the hardest run, just with the amount of talent that the Chiefs needed to go through with, a very lackluster wide receiver core where you really had no wide receiver 1. Now, if you want to say Travis Kelce was their wide receiver 1, or at least number 1 option, I will give you that. But to go through Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa and just the Dolphins in general, Raheem Mostert, the amount of touchdowns that guy had was incredible. And then you go to play the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, and he was an MVP candidate, and he beat you already in the regular season. and you come out with a big victory there. Then you go up against the Ravens with Lamar Jackson winning the MVP, his second MVP, or at that time he was a large favorite to it. But not only that, the Ravens defense was at the level of the 2000s Ravens, where they were setting records for, lowest touchdown percentage in the NFL and things like that. And then you go up against the 49ers, who seemingly always have a great defense. And not only that, they were one of the highest scoring teams in the NFL. And you, an inferior team offensively, if we're talking about the totality offensively, Mahomes was the best quarterback out of all of those quarterbacks. Travis Kelce was the best tight end out of any one of those tight ends that they played. But if we're talking about with wide receiver core, offensive line, defensive backs, defensive front, everybody, there were a lot of parts where the Chiefs, as the point spread shows, were inferior. But somehow, Mahomes and Andy Reid we got it done in the biggest stage when all the cards were pushed to the table. And that just shows that I think this is probably the hardest run that a team has ever had. Probably. Especially, at least within, the 2000s.
Another factor that plays into it, in the Bills and the Ravens game, the weather was terrible. Right? The weather was very cold in the Bills game, although the
Dolphins game, it was freezing. That was like the minus.
That was cold in all three then. It was bad weather in all three. In the Dolphins game,
it was 4 degrees and minus 11 or whatever.
That cooked the Dolphins. They are a warm weather team.
Oh, big time. Big time.
They were frozen. No pun intended.
Literally.
And the Bills game, it was cold. Right? And in the Ravens game, it was raining.
25 degrees, yeah. And then in the Ravens game, there was rain and
So they weathered the weather.
The storm.
They weathered the storm. No pun intended again.
Yeah. So I don't know. This Chiefs team is different than what we've seen.
How many years long? How many more years do you think Andy Reid will coach?
I'd give him 5.
5 more years, you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's 65 years old.
And
I guess he's young compared to some of the coaches, right? Belichick was 71.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll, 72.
Andy Reid broke a Belichick record for longest tenured coach in the NFL to win a Super Bowl. This is his 25th year, I believe, as head coach. And I didn't read that much into it, but I think that's what it was. Longest tenured coach in the NFL to win a Super Bowl, which I think is 25 years. It was something like that. I didn't read that.
I don't understand that one.
I'm probably saying it wrong, but Andy Reid broke a Belichick record. Belichick had 24 years. Andy Reid has 25
Oh,
years.
I see. In terms of head coaching.
Head coach in the NFL, right.
Yeah, he went a long time in Philadelphia without any wins.
Correct. Well, he
got beat in the NFC Championship game 4 years in a row, 3 or 4 years in a row.
He had Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick.
Then he got to the Super Bowl and got beaten by the Patriots.
Correct.
Yeah.
Andy Reid hasn't had bums as quarterbacks.
No.
McNabb, Vick, Alex Smith.
Yeah.
Mahomes,
one of the great, probably go down as one of the greatest.
So I would say now he's probably top 5.
If he can keep playing the way he is in his mobility, if he can hang on to that for 4 or 5 more years, you see him playing until he's 45 years old?
I don't know. 45 might be pushing it, but I'd give him 40.
Yeah.
I give him, barring any cataclysmic injuries, why not?
How old is he now?
I believe he's 20. I want to say 28, but I'm not sure. Patrick Mahomes currently is 28 years old.
28 years old. He's got a long way to go.
Yeah.
He can play another 12 years probably to get to 40.
Right.
Huh? So he might get there. He might get there in terms of the
guy
most
behind
Super
you
Bowl
shaking
wins.
in his boots right now.
And maybe a little. Yeah. I'm sure they're not happy that they tied him for the 2 wins, 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Super Bowls, so they're probably not. The Patriots are not too happy about that, and certainly they'll be rooting against them for the 3-peat.
Well,
that's for sure.
Brady might need to call a couple of his games. Who knows? It's going to be a Fox broadcaster.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think Bill Belichick was thinking watching Andy Reid win another Super Bowl? Sitting at home watching without a job. Got to be hard. Huh? Don't you think? I bet it was hard for him.
People call him the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah.
Belichick's ego is already so big. You think he got dinged by
Gotta
Andy
be
Reid
hard to be
one?
sitting home unemployed.
He's sitting there saying, I have 8 rings. He's got 3. 8's more than 3. I think he's fine. Fine.
Well, I still think sitting at home watching Andy Reid win the Super Bowl when he's unemployed It got to hurt.
I'm sure it hurts,
Yeah.
but once again, he has 8 rings. Reed's got 3.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it is what it is. Let's get into this next one, and I'm sure that this is going to rile people up. I already know. It's going to get some people upset. Brock Purdy, not the best of games. However, he is in his second year. Jimmy Garoppolo had some advice for the young quarterback by saying, keep it simple, man. Just be yourself. So, interesting. I believe he said that, a couple days ago.
Before or after the game?
I believe it was before. It was before the Super Bowl. So yeah, I want to know: do you think Brock Purdy, after this loss, second year, really it's like 1.5 years, give or take? It's not a full 2 years. He came in, I believe, week 11. Yeah, Garoppolo got hurt against the Miami Dolphins. Came in that game, which I think was week 11 or week 12. Do you think the 49ers might be looking at other quarterbacks? And do you think Purdy's the long-term answer for the San Francisco 49ers?
I don't think that the 49ers will be looking at other quarterbacks next year, even if they thought they might want to draft one. They're going to have the next to last pick in the first round. All the great quarterbacks in this draft are going to be gone, long gone by then. So maybe they draft a quarterback, but it won't be one of the elite ones, at least the ones that people think are elite. So you look at Sam Darnold as the backup. I don't think he's going to be beating out Brock Purdy anytime soon. And I think they'd be best to stick with Brock Purdy over Sam Darnold, given Darnold's history of making big mistakes in key situations. So I would say, yes, good chance he'll be the quarterback. I think he will be the quarterback next year. For the long term, maybe it's a little early to say on that because, the long term is quite long for him. He's only 24 years old. So
very young. Is
he going to be the quarterback for 15 years for the 49ers? I think that's a little too soon to say, but I do think he played. I don't think he played poorly in the Super Bowl. He wasn't the one that made a huge blunder that cost him the game. He had a lot of pressure on him. He got them into the position to win the game, and the defense couldn't stop the Chiefs on that last drive. And so, yeah, certainly he's going to be the quarterback next year, and I would say for the foreseeable future.
I want to preface this immediately before I jump into this.
You're going to get yourself in big trouble here.
People are going to hate on me.
Yeah.
But as the saying goes, numbers don't lie. That's what I'm saying up front. Numbers don't lie. And also, I'm prefacing this immediately. I believe Brock Purdy is better than this quarterback. He has a better skill set than this quarterback. But the numbers don't lie. Purdy just played his 27th game, including the playoffs with the 49ers. Let's take a look at another 49er legend in his first 27 games with the 49ers. Oh, nearly identical. Purdy's a little bit better, but nearly identical. So to say that this gap is so massive between Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo is disingenuous. Because even if Brock Purdy looked better doing it, the gap between him and Jimmy Garoppolo is not that big.
Look, the TD interception.
Okay.
48-14, 40-24.
Right.
The quarterback passer
Purdy's
rating,
a little bit more
110 versus
efficient.
97. That's quite a bit difference.
I said he's more efficient. And people are saying, oh, the offense is so much better with Brock Purdy. Team points per game is 0.2 different in the first 27 games. And Jimmy Garoppolo did not have the plethora of talent that Brock Purdy does. I don't think he had Debo. I think he only had George Kittle. He didn't have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, who literally in this game carried that 49ers team. 80 yards receiving, led the team. 80 yards rushing, led the team. 160 yards, and had one of the 2 touchdowns the 49ers scored, which was a beautiful pass, a trick play from Juwan Jennings. So to say that there's a massive difference and that this team is so much better with Brock Purdy being the quarterback is disingenuous because guess what? In the first 27 games of both their careers, nearly identical. But I'll say this again because I know people will comment about this. I think Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I also think we have to be fair on more levels than just one. The first level would be Remember this play? I'm going to show it right now for our YouTube audience. Remember this play people bashed Jimmy Garoppolo for? The overthrow on Emmanuel Sanders? The only play people remember besides the comeback catch that Tyreek Hill had was this overthrow. In this game, Brock Purdy had two similar plays. Wide open receivers, which he overthrew. And there was no one really in his face. The first one was, I believe, both these actually. They're two up right now. Each wide open receivers. One's to Debo, one's to Brandon Ayuk. Each would have been touchdowns. Each would have had a very, very difficult time. It would have, by the way, they opened the game nearly 7-0. And in this game, down by 3, you go up 17-13. Chiefs have to respond with basically they have one drive in the fourth quarter. Then if they score a touchdown or score a field goal, you have the opportunity to go back and score to either increase your lead or come back in the game. But there were two overthrows that Purdy completely missed. So we have to be fair here. If we're going to bash Jimmy Garoppolo for an overthrow on Emmanuel Sanders, we have to at least acknowledge that Purdy also did not have a great game. We're not, and by the way, this was not a Brock Purdy, virtuoso game, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. This was a tale of two halves. A tale of one quarter, basically. The first quarter, he was spectacular. He looked like Brock Purdy this season. 80% completion percentage, over 100 yards, no turnovers, over 110 passer rating. And in quarters 2, 3, 4, and overtime, we saw the difference between an experienced quarterback and one that still needs to develop.
Mm-hmm. Well, we also saw a quarterback that was under increasing pressure throughout the game and still managed to get the team into position to win the game. They could have won the game. If the defense had stopped Kansas City on the last drive, they would have won the Super Bowl. So it wasn't on Brock Purdy there. He got him the lead. He did get him the lead. They had the lead. Right?
Well, they had the lead basically the entire game.
They had the lead twice. They had the lead in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs had to come back to score to tie it, to get it into overtime. And he had the lead in overtime to win the game. So both times it was the defense that let him down, and that's because they ran out of gas.
I would say the defense stopped touchdowns and made them field goals. You're going down in the red zone, and even though the kick was blocked, you held them on third down. You held them out of the 2 or 3 yard line.
The Chiefs were marching right up and down the field.
But did they score? They can march up and down the field all they want, but did they score touchdowns?
They got the points to get a tie and get into overtime. And then they won. They won with a touchdown in overtime. They marched right down the field.
Right.
They did it in, 13 plays? It was a long drive. And the strategy of the defense was they should have tightened up a little bit because Mahomes was dinking and dunking. He wasn't going for the big score. They should have tightened up a little bit.
Well, for me, right, we talked about this before. In a number of games, we talked about how great the defense was. They held the Chiefs to 33% in the red zone. 2 of 6. 2 of 6 in the red zone. 6 red zone trips. So I'm not disagreeing with you that the Chiefs marched up and down the field, but what they did was they converted touchdowns into field goals. And Brock Purdy couldn't drive down the field and score touchdowns. He was going down the field and either punting or scoring field goals. So both defenses did their job basically when it came to stopping the other team from taking over this game without scoring touchdowns, with scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, I think if that
this was not the Brock Purdy we saw during the regular season.
Extra point had been kicked, that would have been that could have played.
I would have been petrified for Brock Purdy based on the way the game was going. If they go up that late in the game, there was about 5 minutes remaining. If you go up, actually, I think there was 5 minutes remaining when it was blocked. So the Chiefs go down and score, it would be 5 minutes when they kick the field goal. I don't give any real chance based on how that game was turning out that if you give 5 minutes for Purdy to try to do something, that they would succeed based on the way the game was going. The offense was stagnant in that third quarter, and then going into the fourth, it once again was basically doing nothing. Because, and this I don't necessarily say is Brock Purdy's fault, because he wasn't the one audibling out of these plays. The amount of pass plays that were called, especially in that second half, were terrible. Like I said, in the third quarter, there were 3 rushes and 10 passes. 4 of 10, 25 yards. And I would say Joe Burrow, Matt Stafford, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, for the most part. Maybe not in the playoff game, maybe in the regular season. Under pressure, these quarterbacks would fare better, whether it be because of athletic ability, whether it be because they're more so of a veteran quarterback, whether it be because they stand in and take a hit. they would be better in those situations getting pressured. Brock Purdy had several times where low throw to Deebo Samuel, completely miss two receivers as we saw. Kittle was wiped out of this game. He had really no effect on the outcome of this game.
He got hurt, too.
I think they should have fed Deebo more on screens and runs.
Deebo was, they took him out of the game, too. He was not a big factor in the game.
He had 11 targets, and I think most of those were just forced plays. There were a couple where he was just trying to force it to Deebo to try to have him be spectacular. But in this game, it really came down to just making the layups. Mahomes, since Tyreek Hill left, they needed to sort of morph their offense into not as, 75-yard touchdown bombs and be more of the methodical dink and dunk and then the occasional
How about
overplay.
the pass to Hardman?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The occasional deep shot instead of looking for Tyreek Hill down, 45 yards deep and throwing it to him. They had to morph this offense into something more dink and dunk. And Brock Purdy, this offense is living on yards after the catch. That's what they live off of. I talked about this before on the show. Deebo Samuel is I believe number one in yards after the catch per reception. He gets, I think, 8.9 yards after the catch per reception. Nearly a touchdown after he catches the football. Nearly a first down. So tried to make the big time play. He tried to get to his playmakers downfield. I think they should have ran the ball more. I'm not putting that on Purdy, although he could audible. But the offensive game plan and even L'Jarius Sneed, and this is where I'm gonna call out Brock Purdy on this, because even the Chiefs knew. L'Jarius Sneed said the Chiefs knew that they were going to run the ball and said, and I quote, "We just wanted Brock to throw the ball." They did not fear his arm. They did not fear him whatsoever. So to say that this guy is a threat,
well, I
you
can
fear
understand why
Josh Allen.
Sneed would say that. He's a defensive back.
Right, but what I'm saying is you fear Joe Burrow. You fear Mahomes. You fear Allen. I'm sure some people would fear Stafford. You fear a lot of these top quarterbacks. L'Jarius Sneed's coming out and saying, we don't give a damn. We know McCaffrey's great. We know they're going to run the ball because he's their offense. We're going to let Brock Purdy beat us. If Brock Purdy beats us with his arm, so be it. And they were right.
Okay, well, Brock Purdy had the lead near the end of the fourth quarter, and the defense let the Chiefs drive down the field and score the tying field goal. In overtime, Brock Purdy took him down, got him the lead, 3-point lead. The defense let the Chiefs drive down the field and score a touchdown. So they had two chances to win the Super Bowl. It's the defense that let him down, not Brock Purdy.
So in overtime, Brock Purdy couldn't get it done on third down. Couldn't get it done on second down.
That was because the offensive line let Chris Jones run right up unblocked. To me, come on, he had no time to throw the ball. He didn't have time to see those open receivers. He just had to unload it and get rid of it. Wow. So
George Kittle was in his
and guess
line of
what?
sight.
Guess
We're
what?
even
Though that happened, they still scored a field goal. They did score a field goal to take the lead.
Only a field goal, and in overtime, so the Chiefs could go down and match them if they really want to.
I'm not going to be that hard on Brock Purdy. I think he acquitted himself
I'm not saying
pretty
he's a bad
well
quarterback.
in his first Super Bowl.
I'm not saying he's a
I
bad
think he
quarterback.
acquitted himself pretty well going up against one of the best quarterbacks who's going to go down in history as one of the best quarterbacks of all time. So I think the 40. Who's favored to win the Super Bowl next year?
This is such a mistake
right now.
It's the
Tell
49ers.
me, who
it's
is it?
such a mistake.
Yeah,
the 49ers.
and who do they think was going to be a quarterback for them during next year? Brock Purdy.
Yeah. But I think that's such a mistake. It's such a mistake. It's again.
The Chiefs.
It's disrespecting the Chiefs, which they lived off of the entire season.
Who do you're a man of numbers and data and all that, right? So
I believe
the
numbers
Chiefs
don't lie.
The Chiefs must have a bunch of people that are going to be free agents that they're going to have to re-sign.
L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones are the only two big time.
Chris
players.
Jones. He's a big leader on that team, right? He's the leader of the defense. He called him over after the 49ers scored a touchdown and say, hey, we're beating ourselves here.
Right.
This is what we got to do. And that had an effect on them. I think he's a true leader, and he's a great player. So they're going to have to find a way to keep him.
And this might just be, adding gasoline to the fire that apparently I've been burning for the past.
You've created it with
14
me
minutes.
already. You've got me upset.
How about this one? Brock Purdy, when healthy, was perfect last season. Literally undefeated when he was healthy. Kyle Shanahan still wanted to go out and get Tom Brady, even though Brock Purdy was literally perfect when he was healthy.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan, this is
Well, that
confirmed,
doesn't mean that he
wanted
would-
Tom Brady to start over Purdy.
Uh-huh.
Even though we just saw Tom Brady
okay.
look petrified with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the season prior. Literally running away from defenders and throwing the ball away when there was an ounce of pressure.
Okay, well,
like
you know what?
If the Chiefs pressured Tom Brady, if the Chiefs pressured Tom Brady in that 2022 season with the Buccaneers, Brady would have retired after the game, let alone after the season. Brock Purdy was pressured nearly 50% of the time. Brady would be like 10 of 30 for like 89 yards and maybe an interception or two if the Chiefs defense got after Brady like they did Purdy. And yet Kyle Shanahan, after that bad season, goes, we'll take Brady over Purdy. Why
Okay,
not?
well, I would say Tom Brady was not petrified in the last year with the Tampa Bay. He threw for over 5,000 yards.
Not in that season. You're thinking of the wrong season. That was 2021.
He still did. How many did he pass for in 2022?
2022. I'm about to. Tom Brady in his last season in the NFL threw for 46. Basically, it's 4694. So let's call it 4,700 yards.
Okay, not bad.
25 touchdowns, 9 picks.
Not bad. Pretty good, huh? They had no running game. They knew he was going to throw it on almost every play.
733
Okay.
attempts.
The fact that Kyle Shanahan wanted to go out and get the greatest quarterback of all time to come play for him.
Yeah.
In a year where he knew he had the talent to go to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's a diss on Brock Purdy.
I
don't think that's a diss on Brock Purdy.
Undefeated when healthy.
If any other quarterback, maybe, but not Tom. When you're going after Tom Brady,
I'm just saying, Brady had a bad season. Passer rating was the lowest since the 2019 season
was
when
it?
Belichick gave it. It was a 90. So you're complaining about Jimmy Garoppolo's 97. You're okay with a Brady 90? That was his lowest passer rating that Brady had since 2019 when Belichick said,
Jimmy Garoppolo had 24 interceptions.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still won the same amount of games. So you're saying, he didn't have a great touchdown interception ratio.
Not at all.
Completion percentage is basically the same. Passing yards is basically the same. The amount of points the team scored is basically the same. And this is another argument. I forgot to bring this up. The argument is, Jimmy Garoppolo only threw it 8 times in the NFC Championship game against the Packers when he went to the Super Bowl. Let's go through some other times. Good quarterbacks, some Hall of Fame quarterbacks, threw it basically 0 times and still won the game. I believe it was the 2009 season. The Baltimore Ravens against the Patriots in the wild card. You remember that game? Brady did not look so great. Joe Flacco, 4 of 10 for 34 yards and an interception.
For the whole game?
For the whole game. And they whooped the Patriots, I believe, 33-14 because they ran it 51 times. What about, here's one, a Hall of Famer. 1973 AFC Championship game. 3 of 7. 34 yards and an interception. And in the Super Bowl, 6 of 7 for 73 yards. Both won. They won each game. I believe it's Bob Greasy. Each of those games. So 2 games combined. 9 of 13 for 107 yards and an interception.
Obviously, they were planning on running the ball, and the Dolphins
Which is how
had
the
a
offense
fantastic,
functioned in 2019. You give it to Elijah Mitchell. Let him run. You give it to Raheem Mostert. Let him run. And the Packers couldn't stop it. Mac Jones won a game throwing it 3 times, completing 2 of them. Sometimes you need to win games other than having your quarterback throw it 35 times for 300 yards. I thought when it all matters, win is a win. That's what I thought matters. If you win games. And we saw when Trey Lance went down, Jimmy G stepped up, went 7-3, and had similar stats to what Brock Purdy did in that same season. Once again, the gap is not as big if we're talking about the end-all be-all of what happened. So I'll say it again. I said in the comments.
Your argument is Brock Purdy is not the long-term answer at quarterback because Jimmy G wasn't.
No, I'm saying he could be the long-term answer. Absolutely. Because it works. Because it's Kyle Shanahan. Now, if you have questions about Kyle Shanahan.
Why didn't they hang on to Jimmy Garoppolo then? He had basically the same stats.
Injury history. That's the main reason why. That's why they drafted Trey Lance. You couldn't rely on him when it came to being injured. That's at least why I think so. Is he was able to perform. And in the playoffs, you see a little bit of a decrease. But through the first 27 games, Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy are basically the same. Once again, Brock Purdy's the better quarterback. 100%. He looks better, throws a better ball, takes more deep shots, whatever the case may be. But to say that the gap is like Mahomes to Andy Dalton, that's just not true. It's just not true. The gap is basically the number 15 quarterback and maybe the number 17 quarterback. So what? It's not all of a sudden you're talking about like some bum quarterback to an all-time great. And by the way, Brock Purdy also, he's going to break a couple of these, but Jimmy Garoppolo also has the most passing yards in the first 5 starts in 49ers history. Brock Purdy didn't do that. He was close. He's about 400 yards off. And something that I do think Brock Purdy will beat is the fastest quarterback in 49ers history to reach 10,000 yards. Garoppolo did it in 43 games.
He's going to be around for more than a few years.
Right.
He's going to pass for 10,000 yards.
Right, but Jimmy Garoppolo did it in 43 games. He got to 10,000. Brock Purdy has 5,600 in 21 games. He'll pass that. He'll pass it. Maybe it'll be next season if he throws for 5,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Who knows? But Jimmy Garoppolo does still hold some 49er records over Joe Montana.
Do you think it's a
Stevie
repeat Super Bowl next year, 49ers and Chiefs again?
I don't know if it's a repeat with both those teams, but I think that the 49ers obviously have the best shot at making it out of the NFC just because look, they have an inferior conference. You're going up against the Lions, who I don't know if they'll get back to the NFC Championship game. I would like them to. I'd like them to make a Super Bowl. It's about time Detroit's in the Super Bowl. They've never been. Never been.
Well.
The Eagles, Jalen Hurts should be healthier. Rams, Matt Stafford, his availability, we'll need to see, but he was really good when he played last season. Baker Mayfield may shock the world again. Your guy, Baker Mayfield. He may shock the world.
Well, he's not my guy, but I didn't think that he was washed up when
Cowboys
we were
also.
about
Who knows? The Cowboys could break through. I'm just saying, if you compare the AFC to the NFC, the 49ers have more talent than basically everybody. The AFC is where you get interesting. Let's just talk about it real quick. You got Buffalo, Miami. You got Baltimore, Cincinnati. You got Houston. You got Kansas City. You got the Chargers.
It's a lot of good teams.
So basically half the entire conference. It's very, very good. So compared to the NFC where it's like Dallas, Philly, Detroit. Let's do legitimate contenders here because I'm not going to include Tampa Bay as a legitimate contender. But Dallas, Philly, Detroit, maybe the Packers. I'll give them a half. And then San Francisco, maybe the Rams. So we're talking like 5.5 teams compared to like at least 7. If you want to include Rodgers and the Jets, but I don't think so.
Well, AFC.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You would add 8 to that maybe, but I don't know. I'm not saying Purdy is horrible. I'm not saying he's not the long-term answer. I'm just saying he's Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0. He's a better version of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Because he's not mobile like Lamar or Jalen Hurts.
Well,
he doesn't have an arm like Mahomes.
If Jimmy Garoppolo hadn't had the injury history, then they would have stuck with him for the long haul.
If Garoppolo didn't get hurt in 2022, I'd say he's a very good shot that they're still in the NFC Championship game with the way he was playing. He was having his best season of his career with the 49ers. And then he breaks his foot. I mean, and also our top viewed video on the channel is Garoppolo could have won that game when talking about the NFC Championship game, but that's neither here nor there. All right, that does wrap up today's show. It's an explosive show. It's good. It's good. People are going to be enraged about that last topic. I could already tell my comment. It's going to be like...
I think you're right. I was.
Yeah.
So, Nate, it's been a great football season.
Yeah.
We had a really good season together. I enjoyed
my playoffs were 6-13, by the way.
I enjoyed all of our shows. It was a tough season for us and being Patriots fans with them playing poorly and only winning 4 games and the greatest coach in all time being fired. Or I guess mutually parting ways. I'm not sure I believe that. I think he would have loved to have stayed, and Kraft didn't want him there. So we'll see if he gets a job down the road. I'm hoping he does. I'm sure he was hurt watching Andy Reid win that game in such spectacular fashion. And that's got to hurt when you're the greatest out there and you're unemployed. So I don't think to end the season on that, but that's what I'm thinking about. So I'm looking forward to next year, and I'm looking forward to next week when we start really focusing on the NBA.
Yeah, NBA. Knicks got screwed over with a horrible foul call to make them lose that game. But All-Star break for the NBA is coming up soon, very, very shortly. There's a lot going on in the world of sports, and the NFL in about a month's time, it's going to pick up even more. Oh, by the way, since I made a little short video about it, I think we should maybe discuss. You know what? We'll save it for Friday. A little Justin Fields A little hint. It basically goes on the premise of the Steelers release Mitch Trubisky. They want to bring in competition for Kenny Pickett. So Friday we'll talk Justin Fields to the Steelers potentially. And so there you go. You get one Friday topic if y'all stick around for the later end of the show. So there we go. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, the NFL season is officially over. The 2024 season opens in about a month with free agency. There's a lot to talk about. Combine starts in 2 weeks. It starts February 29th, the leap year day. So there we go. But yeah, for this episode, my name is Nathan Harvey. That's Stephen Harvey. We are the hosts of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Hi, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.